The city sprawled, a chaotic symphony of steel, glass, and ceaseless motion. Amidst its towering structures and bustling avenues, Officer Elena Reyes moved with a quiet, almost imperceptible grace. Her world, outside the crisp blue uniform and the adrenaline-fueled moments of duty, was one of meticulous order and profound solitude. Her apartment, nestled on the third floor of a pre-war brownstone, was a testament to this existence, impeccably clean, yet sparsely decorated, each item placed with deliberate purpose. The only sounds that punctuated her evenings were the distant, murmuring hum of the city, a lullaby of anonymity, and the occasional rustle of case files she brought home, reviewing them late into the night under the soft glow of a desk lamp. Dinner was often a simple affair, prepared with efficiency and consumed in silence. A grilled chicken breast, steamed vegetables, a glass of water. There was no background chatter of a television, no music, just the quiet clinking of cutlery against ceramic. Her gaze, however, was rarely vacant. Even while eating, her eyes held a distant, focused intensity, as if she were still processing the day's events or anticipating the next challenge. Her mind was always a step ahead, dissecting, analyzing, and preparing. This singular focus, while making her an exceptional officer, often left little room for the casual intimacies that define the lives of others. Loneliness wasn't a pang she felt often, but a constant low hum beneath the surface of her disciplined routine. Her most consistent companion outside the precinct walls was the gym. Every morning, before the city truly awoke, Elena could be found there, pushing her body to its limits. The rhythmic thud of her running shoes on the treadmill became a metronome for her thoughts, a counterpoint to the controlled power in her movements as she lifted weights or sparred with a phantom opponent. Sweat beaded on her brow, her muscles burned, but her expression remained unyielding. This rigorous training wasn't just about physical fitness, it was a ritual, a way to channel the restless energy within her, to maintain the sharp edge of her readiness, a stark contrast to the often solitary quietude of her life outside of work. The methodical discipline in her routine was her anchor, a silent promise to herself that she was always prepared, always capable. One brisk autumn afternoon, while Elena was on routine patrol in a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood, a shrill, desperate cry pierced the suburban calm. "My purse! He took my purse!" An elderly woman, frail and disheveled, was slumped against a lamppost, tears streaming down her wrinkled face. It was Mrs. Albright, a familiar face from her beat, known for her vibrant garden and her fondness for small talk. The sight of her so utterly distraught sent a jolt through Elena. Most officers might have taken the report, filed it, and moved on. Petty theft was common, and a stolen purse rarely warranted extensive investigation. But something in Mrs. Albright's inconsolable sobs, more than just the loss of money, resonated deeply with Elena. "Mrs. Albright, are you hurt?" Elena knelt, her voice gentle, placing a comforting hand on the woman's shaking arm. "No, dear, I'm all right," Mrs. Albright managed, her voice trembling. "But my purse, it had everything. My pension, yes, but my photo album, my Harry, all our memories. It's gone." Her voice broke, a raw wound of grief. The mention of the photo album, the irreplaceable memories, solidified Elena's resolve. This wasn't just a purse, it was a lifetime. "Don't worry, Mrs. Albright," Elena said, her eyes firm with a quiet promise. "We'll get it back." It was a save-the-cat moment, a small act of profound empathy and dedication to justice for the seemingly insignificant, highlighting Elena's core goodness and commitment. Elena didn't just take the report. She spent extra hours, well beyond her shift, reviewing grainy surveillance footage from nearby stores, painstakingly zooming in on blurry figures, looking for identifying marks. She interviewed local shopkeepers, showing them stills from the footage, asking about anyone unusual. She followed leads that seemed trivial, cross-referencing minor details. Her colleagues, some openly, some silently, questioned her dedication to such a minor case. Detective Miller, her former training officer, a grizzled veteran on the verge of retirement, watched her with a knowing glint in his eye. He knew Elena had a different kind of drive. After 2 days of relentless, almost obsessive work, Elena's persistence paid off. She tracked the thief to a rundown pawn shop on the city's fringes, not through sophisticated forensics, but through sheer, dogged detective work and an uncanny ability to connect seemingly disparate clues. The thief, a young man desperate for cash, had already sold the purse, but Elena found the pawn ticket. She recovered Mrs. Albright's purse, her pension largely intact, and more importantly, the worn, leather-bound photo album. When Elena returned the purse to Mrs. Albright, the old woman gasped, her hands trembling as she clutched it. Her eyes, clouded with tears, landed on the photo album. She opened it, and a soft, choked sob escaped her. "Oh, Harry," she whispered, stroking a faded photograph. She looked up at Elena, her face wet with tears, but her eyes shining with profound gratitude. "Bless you, Officer Reyes. Bless you. You're an angel." Elena merely offered a small, sincere smile. This small act, beyond the call of duty, cemented her commitment to justice, making the audience instinctively root for her. It was a tangible demonstration of her belief that every life, every memory, held immeasurable value. Despite her professional focus, Elena often found herself plagued by a recurring, vague dream. It wasn't a nightmare, but a persistent echo from a past she couldn't quite grasp. The dream always featured a grand, old house, its architectural details ornate, but somehow unsettling. Within its shadowed walls, she heard hushed, urgent arguments, voices rising and falling in frustrated whispers. There was a sense of profound unease, a feeling of something valuable being lost or hidden. And the dream always left her with a lingering sense of foreboding, a quiet anxiety that clung to her even after she awoke. She'd tried to recall more, to piece together the fragments, but it remained elusive, just a fleeting sensation of unresolved tension. On her desk, amidst the active case files with their bright yellow flags and recent reports, lay a worn, unmarked manila folder. It was thick with age, its edges frayed. Inside were faded newspaper clippings from 2 decades ago, detailing an unsolved corporate fraud case. The headlines screamed of shattered lives and vanished fortunes, all linked to a prominent local family, though the family's name was often obscured by legal jargon or vague references. The Sterling Group was mentioned frequently, a financial institution that had imploded, taking countless life savings with it. Elena often found herself poring over these old files with an unusual intensity. It wasn't an official case assigned to her. It was a personal cold case, a quiet obsession. Sergeant Miller, her mentor, would sometimes see her, late in the evening, hunched over the desk, reading the faded print with a furrowed brow. He'd seen that look before in young detectives, the hunger for answers, the drive to right wrongs. But with Elena, it was different. Her dedication to these cold cases, especially those involving unresolved betrayals, felt almost visceral. He noted her quiet intensity, the way her eyes would trace the intricate financial diagrams, as if trying to unlock a secret code. He never asked her directly why these particular cases captivated her so deeply, sensing it was something she might not fully articulate herself. This subtle, unvoiced obsession with a long-buried injustice hinted at a personal connection to past grievances, vaguely mirroring the elusive dream, and foreshadowed her eventual role in the overarching narrative, a silent promise of a truth yet to be unveiled. The quiet before the storm. Indeed. 2 decades, a lifetime for some, had blurred into the city's relentless march forward. Buildings rose and fell, Technologies emerged and vanished, yet the unresolved hum of past injustices lingered, a low-frequency vibration that only certain ears could perceive. For Officer Elena Reyes, that hum had now intensified into a palpable thrum, reverberating through her very being. The cold case files that had once been a quiet, personal obsession were about to burst forth from the shadows, shattering the meticulously ordered world she had built around herself. The summons to Captain Davies' office was unexpected, delivered by a junior officer with a hurried, almost reverent whisper. Captain Davies, a man whose gruff exterior belied a sharp mind and a deep, if often unexpressed, respect for his team, sat behind his imposing desk, a stack of folders before him. Beside him, Detective Harris, a seasoned veteran with a cynical streak as long as his career, leaned back in his chair, a faint smirk playing on his lips. Harris was a by-the-book detective, mistrustful of intuition and particularly skeptical of Elena's unconventional methods, which he often dismissed as hunches. He had a quiet rivalry with Elena, born from a mix of professional jealousy and genuine disagreement over investigative approaches. He believed in grinding through paperwork. She believed in grinding through the truth, no matter how hidden. "Reyes," Captain Davies began, his voice devoid of its usual booming quality, indicating the gravity of the situation. He pushed a thick folder across the desk. Its cover bore a single, ominous label: Sterling Group Fraud, Cold Case Reopened. Elena's breath hitched almost imperceptibly. This was the very case that haunted her desk. The one she'd secretly obsessed over for years. The one that vaguely mirrored the unsettling dream of the grand, old house and hushed arguments. This came down from downtown. Reyes, high priority, anonymous tip. Davies continued, his gaze unwavering. The tipster hinted at hidden assets, a deeper conspiracy. Said a lot of victims are still suffering. They want this solved. Now, we're talking about a massive corporate fraud and embezzlement scheme. Led to the collapse of Sterling Group, almost 20 years ago. Thousands of ordinary citizens lost their life savings. The words hung heavy in the air, each one a hammer blow to Elena's carefully constructed composure. Thousands of ordinary citizens. The phrase resonated with a chilling familiarity, stirring her professional dedication, but more acutely, a personal sense of grievance she couldn't quite articulate. The dream flashed through her mind, the grand house, the hushed arguments. Could this case, this cold, dead file, be connected to that unresolved injustice from her own past, a past she could never fully retrieve? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, a prickle of intuition that transcended logic. Detective Harris let out a dismissive scoff. "Captain, with all due respect, this is a 20-year-old case. It's a graveyard of paper, dead ends. We've got active cases that need attention, not ancient history." His eyes slid towards Elena, a challenge in their depths. He thought this assignment was a fool's errand, a way for Davies to sideline Elena with an impossible task. And he wasn't shy about making his skepticism known. Captain Davies ignored Harris. His eyes, fixed on Elena, held a quiet challenge. "I'm putting you on point, Reyes. You've got a knack for digging up what others miss. Harris will assist, but you lead." This was a rare show of faith from Davies, a testament to his belief in Elena's unique abilities, even if he didn't fully understand them. Elena felt a complex swirl of emotions, relief that the case was finally getting official attention, a fierce determination to uncover the truth, but also an overwhelming sense of daunting responsibility. The sheer volume of old, disorganized data was a labyrinth. Decades-old paper trails, archaic computer systems, defunct shell corporations, obscured transactions, untraceable digital footprints. It was a monumental task. She envisioned herself drowning in a sea of forgotten documents. The initial reaction was a mix of frustration and doubt about her ability to crack such a long-standing mystery. How could one person untangle such a vast, ancient web of deceit? Yet, as she accepted the thick folder, The weight of it in her hands seemed to ignite something dormant within her. The faces of the victims, though unknown, flashed in her mind's eye. Ordinary people. Their trust shattered, their futures stolen. The image fueled a burning need within her, pushing aside the initial despair. This challenge, formidable as it was, awakened a latent instinct, a hunger for justice that transcended mere duty. The case became more than just an assignment. It became an obsession, consuming her thoughts day and night. Her meticulously ordered apartment now had stacks of old files encroaching upon its pristine surfaces. Her quiet evenings punctuated by the frantic clicking of her keyboard as she cross-referenced names, dates, and transactions. She worked tirelessly, fueled by strong coffee and an unyielding resolve. Days bled into nights. She delved into dusty archives, poring over microfiche and ancient databases. The early stages were grueling, a slow, methodical crawl through what seemed like endless dead ends. The sheer incompetence of the original investigation, or perhaps deliberate obfuscation, was infuriating. She found herself piecing together fragmented financial statements, tracing the lineage of defunct companies, and sifting through mountains of testimony from bewildered victims. Her usual quiet dedication transformed into a relentless, almost frenzied pursuit. She started to see patterns in the seemingly random data, connections that had eluded countless other investigators, a recurring sequence of numbers in seemingly unrelated transactions, a peculiar legal firm that appeared in multiple shell corporation documents, a distinctive, almost artistic, signature on a minor, overlooked contract. It was a talent she was only just discovering, a hidden aptitude for discerning order within chaos. Her mind, once confined to the immediate details of patrol work, now stretched and expanded, hungry for the larger picture. The breakthrough came late one night, a single, flickering fluorescent light illuminating her exhausted face, deep within a digitized archive of archaic property deeds, buried under layers of legal jargon and obscure corporate filings. Elena found it, a tiny, seemingly insignificant piece of evidence, a coded entry in a hidden ledger, cross-referenced with a series of property transfers. The ledger didn't name individuals directly, but it contained specific, rare family heirlooms mentioned in a victim's testimony, a unique silver locket, an antique pocket watch that had supposedly been liquidated as part of the Sterling Group's assets. These items, according to her cross-referencing, were tied to obscure properties now subtly linked to the Moretti family. The Moretti family. The name sent a jolt through her. It was one of the city's oldest and most influential dynasties, synonymous with old money, philanthropy, and impeccable social standing. They were untouchable, woven into the very fabric of the city's elite. And then, the more specific connection the ledger, when fully decoded, pointed to transactions tied directly to Isabella Moretti, the family's dazzling socialite daughter. Isabella, known for her philanthropic endeavors and her stunning beauty, was currently the talk of the town, poised to marry Marcus Thorne, a prominent tech mogul. Their wedding was touted as the social event of the decade, a union of old wealth and new power. The connection was not yet damning, not enough for a warrant, but it was enough to make Elena realize the true, horrifying scope and danger of the investigation. The social and political implications of investigating such a prominent family were immense. She could feel the pressure mounting already, even without having made a move. This wasn't just a corporate fraud. It was a conspiracy that reached the highest echelons of the city. Knowing this, Elena could not back down. The case was no longer just a cold file, a professional challenge. It was a living, breathing monster, directly linked to the city's elite, and chillingly, to a past injustice that felt increasingly, disturbingly personal. The vague dream of the grand house, the hushed arguments. A part of her wondered if that house, those voices, belonged to the Morettis. She was at the point of no return. The Sterling Group cold case had found its way to her and Elena Reyes, the meticulous officer who believed in justice for every forgotten victim, was now inextricably bound to its dark heart. The calm before the storm was over. The storm had just begun. Armed with the shocking, yet still fragmented, link to the Moretti family, Elena Reyes understood the delicate tightrope she now walked. This was no longer just a cold case. It was a living, breathing viper's nest, intertwined with the city's most influential elite. Direct confrontation was out of the question, at least for now. Her strategy had to be subtle, a discreet probing beneath the gilded surface of the Moretti dynasty. She initiated a low-key investigation into Isabella Moretti and her fiancé, Marcus Thorne, operating largely under the radar, a ghost in the vast machinery of police work. She spent countless hours in the quiet hum of her office, poring over public records, property deeds, corporate filings, even old society pages, searching for inconsistencies. Social media footprints, meticulously crafted to project an image of effortless perfection, were dissected for the slightest deviation from the narrative. She discreetly interviewed former associates of the Moretti family, those who had fallen out of favor or moved on, listening for whispers, for the undertones of discontent or fear. Elena's trained eye, honed by years of observation, noted Isabella at public events, the dazzling smile, the impeccable designer gowns, the confident poise. Yet, beneath the polished veneer, Elena detected subtle anxieties, a fleeting flicker in the eyes when certain topics were mentioned, a too tight grip on a champagne flute, or a calculated gesture that seemed out of place. Isabella was a master of performance, but Elena had learned to read the script behind the mask. The precinct, meanwhile, remained largely oblivious to the true direction of Elena's investigation. Detective Harris, ever skeptical, saw Elena's deep dive into old records as further proof of her obsession. He preferred tangible leads, active crime scenes, not dusty archives. Captain Davies, though supportive, was a busy man, managing a bustling precinct with a multitude of active cases. He trusted Elena, but his attention was necessarily divided. This allowed Elena to work in the shadows, unburdened by constant oversight, though it also meant she lacked immediate backup. A few days later, a progress meeting was convened in Captain Davies' office. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and the tension of unsolved cases. Elena sat quietly, observing as Detective Harris spread out a collection of fragmented evidence from the Sterling Group case, old photographs, faded documents, disjointed testimonies. Harris, impatient and dismissive, pointed to one particular item, an old, slightly sepia-toned photograph of a peculiar architectural detail. It was a close-up of a unique, ornate archway on what appeared to be an industrial building. "This," Harris scoffed, tossing it aside, "is completely irrelevant. Just some old building, probably demolished years ago. A waste of time." Elena, who had been listening intently, her mind already cross-referencing and analyzing, paused. Her meticulous attention to detail, combined with her nascent talent for spatial memory, a trait subtly linked to her recurring childhood dream of a grand, old house, made the image resonate. She recognized it. "Captain," she stated quietly, her voice cutting through Harris's dismissive tone. "This isn't just any building. It's the former subsidiary site of Sterling Group. Yes, but that specific archway, it's distinctive. It matches the unique architectural style of the old Moretti family estate." Harris chuckled, a condescending sound. "Reyes, are you saying the Morettis secretly moved an archway from a defunct bank into their mansion? Come on, that's absurd." "Not moved, detective," Elena corrected, her gaze unwavering, ignoring Harris's smirk. "Incorporated, or rather, a part of its original design was replicated elsewhere." She then leaned forward, her finger tracing a line on an old city map she'd brought, cross-referencing it with a complex overlay of property records she had meticulously pieced together. Sterling Group's main office wasn't just a bank. It was an architectural extension of an older Moretti-owned building. That specific archway was part of a larger complex. What Harris has dismissed as some old building was originally a subsidiary structure of the Moretti estate before it was repurposed for Sterling Group. When Sterling collapsed, the public records indicated a full demolition. But my research suggests only the facade was removed, and the core structure, with this specific archway, was reintegrated into a new, hidden property link. A property that, under layers of shell corporations, leads directly back to a trust controlled by the Moretti family. Elena then produced a series of aerial photographs and older blueprints, digitally enhanced, showing how the unique archway had indeed been preserved and seamlessly incorporated into a newly constructed, seemingly unrelated, property now owned by a labyrinthine network of shell corporations that ultimately led back to the Moretti family. Her revelation wasn't boastful. She was simply connecting the dots her mind couldn't unsee, presenting the truth with undeniable clarity. The information had been hidden in plain sight for 2 decades, waiting for a mind like hers to assemble the pieces. Captain Davies, who had initially listened with a dismissive air, leaning back in his chair, now sat bolt upright. His expression shifted from skepticism to a mixture of surprise and growing respect. He had dismissed Elena's hunches before, but this was different. This was concrete, verifiable, and chillingly precise. She had connected disparate pieces of information that no one else, not even seasoned detectives, had noticed or bothered to investigate. The implications were staggering. Unbeknownst to Elena, Marcus Thorne, Isabella's fiancé, was also present in the meeting. He had been quietly assisting the police, not as an official consultant, but as a concerned citizen who had approached Captain Davies. Marcus had grown increasingly uneasy about Isabella's recent secretive behavior, her late-night phone calls, her sudden evasiveness when he questioned her about her family's past. He had started to feel a creeping dread about the true nature of the Moretti family's wealth. He was there, hoping to get some clarity, some reassurance. He witnessed Elena's sharp insight firsthand, saw the undeniable logic of her revelation. A pang of both admiration for Elena's brilliance and a cold dread about what she might uncover regarding Isabella shot through him. The woman he was about to marry was clearly more complex and potentially darker than he had ever imagined. His trust in Isabella, already fraying, was now on the verge of snapping. As the meeting concluded, the atmosphere around Isabella Moretti, though she wasn't present, began to shift. Her sharp intuition, honed by years of navigating social circles and sensing underlying currents, picked up on the subtle change. Marcus was more distant, less effusive. There were new, probing questions from long-standing family associates. She sensed the police investigation was no longer just a distant rumble. It was drawing closer, its focus narrowing. A flicker of panic ignited within her. Isabella, cunning and manipulative, immediately went on the offensive. She subtly planted false leads for Elena to follow, hoping to throw her off the scent. She accidentally left a document on a public desk, a fabricated email chain pointing towards an innocent, distant relative as the true culprit. She manipulated online information, subtly altering old news articles and creating fake social media profiles to construct a meticulously crafted, yet false, alibi for herself during key periods of the fraud. Her aim was to waste Elena's precious time and discredit her investigation. Meanwhile, Julian Moretti, antagonist Type A, Isabella's older brother and the true, shadowy mastermind behind the Sterling Group fraud, became aware of Elena's unexpected progress. Julian was a man who moved in the deepest, darkest circles of power, his ruthlessness hidden beneath a veneer of quiet influence. He received fragmented reports from his network of corrupt contacts within the city, whispers from clerks in City Hall, off-duty officers on his payroll, even a disgruntled detective who resented Elena's rapid rise. He learned about Elena's discovery of the archway connection, a detail he had considered insignificant, a forgotten relic of the past. Julian saw Elena not as a minor nuisance, but as a significant, unpredictable threat. He immediately initiated a counter-operation, cold and precise. He instructed his subordinates to destroy any remaining incriminating physical evidence, particularly old ledgers and paper documents that might have escaped the initial purge. Digital forensics experts on his payroll were tasked with digitally erasing any lingering records, creating a deeper web of encrypted false trails. More chillingly, he authorized subtle intimidation tactics against potential witnesses, anonymous threats, suspicious accidents, ensuring no one dared to speak or link him directly to the crime. He also began a calculated smear campaign against Elena within the police force, carefully spreading rumors about her unstable and obsessive nature, her unprofessionalism, hoping to undermine her credibility and isolate her, making her a rogue cop who couldn't be trusted. The stage was set for a dangerous game of cat and mouse, with Elena unknowingly walking directly into the lion's den of the Moretti family. The subtle tremors of Elena's investigation, once dismissed as mere whispers, had reached Julian Moretti as a chillingly clear prophecy of doom. His sister, Isabella, continued to play her part, an unwitting pawn in Julian's grander scheme. But her increasing nervousness confirmed his fears. The diligent officer was getting too close. Julian, a man whose power resided in the shadows and whose ruthlessness was masked by an impenetrable facade of legitimate influence, understood that direct confrontation with Elena would be both messy and risky. He needed to eliminate her, not with a bang, but with a whimper, a public, professional annihilation. The city, meanwhile, was awash in a different kind of news. The engagement of Isabella Moretti and Marcus Thorne, the union of old money and new tech, culminated in the announcement of their wedding date. It was set to be the social event of the year, a spectacle of opulence and tradition, to be held in the city's oldest and most prestigious cathedral. The announcement, plastered across society pages and whispered in exclusive circles, wasn't just a date, it was a deadline. For Elena, the lavish ceremony, a symbol of purity and commitment, was about to become the ironic arena for the public exposure of a dark, long-buried secret. She had to gather irrefutable evidence before the I-do's were exchanged, or her chance at justice, and the victim's last hope, might be lost forever. Elena found herself increasingly isolated, a lonely sentinel standing against an unseen tide. Julian Moretti, with his vast network and insidious influence, subtly twisted the gears of power. Calls were made. Favors were subtly requested. Captain Davies, though he trusted Elena's instincts, began to face escalating pressure. Anonymous complaints about Elena's unorthodox methods and unprofessional obsession landed on his desk. He found himself fielding quiet, yet firm, suggestions from influential city council members and even a few powerful judicial figures, all subtly pushing him to reassign Elena or to dismiss her increasingly wild theories about the Morettis. Julian's operatives, masters of subterfuge, deliberately leaked fragmented, sensationalized stories to the press, painting Elena as a rogue cop, unstable and reckless, undermining her credibility and attempting to isolate her from her own department. Her immediate team members, usually reliable, were subtly pulled away. Detective Miller, her mentor, was suddenly burdened with an unexpected surge of high-priority emergencies that conveniently kept him out of the loop. Other colleagues found themselves reassigned to fabricated stakeouts or review tedious administrative tasks, leaving Elena with minimal resources. The precinct, once a place of camaraderie, now felt like a lonely island. The few who had initially admired her brilliance now kept their distance, wary of the political fallout. They offered sympathetic glances, but no tangible help. Elena was forced to work almost entirely alone. Her only allies her razor-sharp mind and an unwavering conviction that she was on the right path, despite the growing skepticism that surrounded her like a suffocating fog. The clock ticked relentlessly towards the wedding day. Each passing hour felt like a physical weight, pressing down on her. Elena worked without sleep, fueled by a single-minded determination that bordered on obsession. Her apartment, once meticulously clean, was now a war zone of scattered files, empty coffee cups, and glowing screens. She raced against time, pursuing every lead, only to encounter numerous dead ends and near misses. Each unanswered phone call to a reluctant witness, each closed door in her path, amplified the urgency. The pressure wasn't just professional, it was a personal race against the clock to prevent a grave injustice from being cemented forever, to finally give peace to the victims of Sterling Group. Julian, anticipating Elena's every move, had woven an elaborate tapestry of deception. He set up intricate booby traps to derail her investigation. Carefully constructed fake evidence was planted, falsified digital records of transactions leading to decoy shell corporations in obscure foreign countries, seemingly damning emails pointing to a long-dead scapegoat, even a meticulously fabricated confession from a minor player in the original fraud. Elena, tirelessly pursuing these leads, would find herself led down time-consuming rabbit holes, each one a dead end, designed to make her look incompetent and waste precious hours she didn't have. She'd follow a digital trail for days, only to find it evaporate into thin air, a cleverly designed malware that corrupted her system or wiped the data she'd just accessed. More alarmingly, the intimidation escalated beyond mere rumors and bureaucratic roadblocks. Julian orchestrated subtle physical threats, designed to rattle her and force her off the case. A near-miss traffic accident in an empty intersection, a sudden swerve forcing her off the road, the screech of tires and the smell of burning rubber. Then, a chilling break-in at her apartment. Nothing was stolen. No violence. Just a clear, unsettling message, a single black rose placed on her pillow, its petals wilting, and a faded photograph of the Sterling Group building, one she had been studying, pinned to her wall with a knife. It was a clear, terrifying message that she was being watched, that her life was in danger, and that Julian knew exactly where to find her. The intent was not to harm, but to intimidate, to inject fear into her relentless pursuit of justice. Elena felt the chilling tendrils of fear, but it was quickly overshadowed by a surge of furious determination. This wasn't just about a case anymore. It was personal. Julian was playing a dangerous game, and she was done playing by his rules. She tightened her security, armed herself with a backup weapon, and doubled down on her efforts. The true, irrefutable evidence, she realized, wouldn't be found in complex digital trails or obscure paper documents. Julian was too smart, too meticulous for that. It had to be something physical, undeniable, something hidden in plain sight, perhaps even within Isabella's personal effects, or something Julian, in his arrogance, might have overlooked in his haste to cover his tracks. Her recurring dream intensified, growing sharper in its details, the ornate archway, the hushed arguments, now more specific, voices she almost recognized. A particular antique silver locket, a family heirloom, flashed in her mind's eye. She remembered seeing it in old society photos of Isabella, a distinctive piece that didn't quite fit with the Moretti's otherwise modern aesthetic. She started cross-referencing this locket with the victim testimonies she had meticulously reviewed. One victim, an elderly woman who had lost her life savings, had described a unique silver locket that her family had owned, passed down through generations, which had somehow ended up in Sterling Group's assets during the liquidation, supposedly to cover debts. This was the same locket Elena had seen in the Moretti family's old financial ledger, the one with the coded entry. Could it be a hidden key? The clock was ticking. The wedding invitations had been sent, the cathedral bells polished. Elena knew her time was running out. She meticulously planned her final moves, relying on her intuition and her unparalleled eye for detail. The gauntlet had been thrown, and Elena Reyes, though alone, was ready to step into the symbolic arena and face the ultimate test. The grand wedding, meant to celebrate a union, was about to witness a very different kind of revelation. The relentless countdown of 48 hours had finally dissolved into the relentless current of time, culminating in the most anticipated social event of the year, The city's oldest and most prestigious cathedral stood majestic, its ancient stone walls humming with the suppressed excitement of hundreds of guests. The air inside was thick with anticipation, the delicate scent of lilies mingling with expensive perfumes and the faint, metallic tang of nervous energy. Soft organ music filled the vast space, a prelude to the sacred vows. Isabella Moretti, a vision in white lace and silk, stood at the altar beside Marcus Thorne. Her radiant smile, practiced to perfection, belied the nervous flutter in her stomach. Marcus, handsome and earnest, gazed at her with a devotion that seemed almost too pure for the dark secrets swirling around them. The priest's voice, resonant and clear, filled the cathedral, guiding them through the ancient ceremony. "Do you take this woman, Isabella, to be your lawfully wedded wife?" Just as the sacred words hung in the air, a sudden, jarring sound shattered the hushed solemnity. The ornate, heavy oak doors at the back of the cathedral burst open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the bright afternoon sun. All heads turned, a ripple of confused whispers erupting through the congregation. A collective gasp, sharp and sudden, cut through the organ music. It was Officer Elena Reyes. Dressed in her crisp police uniform, meticulously pressed despite her sleepless nights, Elena strode down the long central aisle. Each rhythmic thud of her polished boots echoed in the sacred space, a stark, deliberate counterpoint to the gentle wedding music. Her posture was straight, her shoulders back, her face a mask of determined resolve. She didn't shout, didn't demand attention, yet her every movement conveyed an undeniable authority that commanded silence. Ushers, initially attempting to intercept her, hesitated and fell back, overwhelmed by her unwavering purpose. The priest, mid-sentence, froze, his eyes widening in stunned silence as Elena approached the altar. Marcus, confused, turned to see what was happening, his brow furrowed. Isabella, initially blissfully ignorant, her back to the aisle, sensed the sudden shift in the atmosphere. The murmur of the crowd, the abrupt silence of the organ, the subtle stiffening of Marcus beside her. She turned, her radiant smile slowly transforming into a mask of stunned realization. Then cold, desperate panic, as her eyes, once filled with joyous anticipation, met Elena's unwavering gaze. The contrast between Isabella's ethereal white gown and Elena's stark blue uniform was a poignant tableau, a clash of innocence and accusation. Elena stopped just a few feet from the altar, her presence an unyielding force in the sacred space. Her voice, though not raised, was clear and strong, cutting through the thick silence. "Isabella Moretti," Elena stated, her gaze fixed on the bride, allowing no room for doubt or evasion. "I have a warrant for your arrest on charges of conspiracy to commit corporate fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice." A gasp rippled through the congregation. The carefully constructed facade of the wedding, of Isabella's impeccable life, shattered in an instant. Marcus recoiled slightly, a silent, heartbroken realization dawning on his face. Elena didn't fumble for a document or project images onto a screen. She reached into her uniform pocket and produced a small, antique silver locket. It was exquisite, intricately designed, and Elena held it up for all to see. "This locket, Ms. Moretti," she continued, her voice unwavering, "a family heirloom, supposedly lost in the Sterling Group liquidation, holds more than sentimental value." With a subtle, practiced movement, she deftly opened the locket. Instead of a faded photograph or a lock of hair, a microscopic, almost invisible etching was revealed on the inside of the casing. A series of numbers and letters, a coded account number. Within this seemingly innocent family crest, a micro-etched engraving reveals the key offshore account number used in the Sterling Group fraud. The crowd stirred, a wave of confusion turning into horrified understanding. Whispers erupted, louder now. merging with the muted clicking of press cameras. Isabella, despite the shock that bleached her face, was still a master of deflection. Her voice trembled with feigned distress, her eyes wide and pleading. "Officer, this is a mistake. I don't know what you're talking about, Marcus. Darling, tell her, this is absurd." She clutched at Marcus's arm, her fingers digging into his suit, trying to use her charm and the sanctity of the moment to sway the crowd, to paint herself as a wronged victim. For a fleeting second, doubt flickered in some eyes, a hesitation from those who revered the Moretti name. But Elena countered with the irrefutable truth, delivering the final, crushing blow. Her voice resonated with the certainty of justice. "We've secured access to the funds, Ms. Moretti, frozen just moments ago. Hundreds of millions, retrieved from the accounts linked to this locket." She paused, letting the magnitude of her words sink in. Then, the coup de grace. "Your brother, Julian Moretti, has already been apprehended. He was caught attempting to flee the city. He confessed to your involvement in exchange for leniency." The words struck Isabella like a physical blow. Her facade completely crumbled. The feigned distress evaporated, replaced by a mask of naked terror and defeat. Her beautiful face contorted, her eyes darting wildly, searching for an escape that didn't exist. She hadn't expected Julian to be caught, let alone to confess. The crowd's reaction shifted dramatically, a collective tide turning. The initial shock gave way to an audible gasp of horror, then murmurs of condemnation against Isabella. Marcus Thorne's face, which had been a tableau of confusion, now collapsed into a silent, heartbreaking picture of betrayal and despair. He stared at Isabella, then at the locket, the realization crushing him. The woman he loved, the woman he was about to marry, was a criminal, a deceitful accomplice in a scheme that had destroyed countless lives. He released her arm, his hand falling limply to his side. From the back of the cathedral, Captain Davies, who had arrived discreetly with a small backup team and watched the unfolding drama with bated breath. His initial skepticism replaced by a look of sheer awe and respect, nodded almost imperceptibly at Elena. Her brilliance had not only uncovered a deeply buried truth, but had done so with a precision and theatricality that left him speechless. Subtly present in the congregation were a few of the victims of the Sterling Group fraud, elderly couples who had lost their retirement, single mothers stripped of their savings, now discreetly shedding tears of vindication. Their quiet sobs were swallowed by the rising tide of public outrage. Two uniformed officers, acting on Elena's silent cue, stepped forward. "Isabella Moretti," one of them stated, his voice firm. "You're under arrest." As they escorted her out, the heavy, ornate doors of the cathedral seemed to mock her. Her beautiful white wedding dress, once a symbol of purity and new beginnings, now trailed behind her like a shroud, a stark, ironic contrast to the grim reality of her arrest. The triumphant wedding music had faded, replaced by the murmur of justice finally served, a discordant symphony echoing in the once sacred space. The pursuit of truth had found its dramatic culmination, and for Elena, the light of vindication shone brightly amidst the shattered dreams of the Moretti dynasty. The tumultuous echoes of the cathedral arrest reverberated far beyond its hallowed walls, sending shockwaves through the city's elite and the wider public. Julian Moretti, the true architect of the Sterling Group fraud, had attempted a desperate, last-ditch escape. Believing his network of influence impenetrable, he had boarded a private jet at a secluded airfield, confident he would vanish without a trace. However, Elena Reyes, anticipating his arrogance and meticulous planning, had prepositioned a tactical team based on his known escape routes and habits. They apprehended him on the tarmac, his frantic demands for lawyers and threats of reprisal falling on deaf ears. His capture, just moments after Isabella's dramatic arrest, was the final devastating blow to the Moretti family's illicit empire. Interrogated under the crushing weight of Elena's irrefutable evidence, the coded locket, the meticulous financial reconstruction, the intercepted communications, Julian's carefully constructed facade of invincibility cracked. He knew the game was up. His confession, coerced by the overwhelming and undeniable proof Elena provided, was a bitter pill. But he swallowed it in exchange for the promise of leniency, hoping to salvage some shred of his future, however bleak. His vast illicit network of shell corporations crumbled. His hidden assets were seized by federal agents, and he faced a lengthy, inescapable prison sentence. His public image, once synonymous with power and philanthropy, was now irrevocably shattered, replaced by the ugly stain of corruption and greed. Justice, swift and severe, had finally arrived for the mastermind, a fitting end for his decades of manipulation and the ruin he had sown. Meanwhile, Captain Davies, still reeling from the sheer audacity and brilliance of Elena's actions in the cathedral, sat in his office a few days later, a stack of news clippings about the Moretti arrests piled on his desk. His initial skepticism about Elena, fueled by Julian's subtle pressures and his own ingrained adherence to traditional police work, had been utterly obliterated. He had watched her, in that church, dismantle a 20-year-old conspiracy with nothing but her intellect and an unwavering belief in justice. He realized with a humbling clarity how profoundly he had underestimated her. He felt a deep surge of respect, tinged with a quiet shame for his own doubts. He summoned Elena to his office, the atmosphere thick with unspoken words. "Officer Reyes," he began, his voice gruff but stripped of all its usual brusqueness, revealing a sincerity Elena rarely heard. He rose from behind his desk, walking around to stand directly in front of her. "I owe you an apology. A heartfelt, unreserved apology. I was wrong. I allowed external pressures, and frankly, my own stubbornness, to cloud my judgment. You saw what none of us could. You're the best investigator I've ever seen. Period." He extended his hand, a gesture of profound respect. "I'm proud to work with you." The words were simple, but their weight resonated deeply within Elena. A few days later, in a department-wide briefing that drew unprecedented attention from local and national media, Captain Davies publicly acknowledged Elena's astounding success. He detailed her meticulous investigative work, her relentless pursuit of truth, and her pivotal role in unraveling the Sterling Group fraud. He didn't shy away from admitting his own initial reservations, making his praise of Elena even more impactful. With the full backing of the police chief, Captain Davies announced Elena's immediate promotion to detective lieutenant. More significantly, he granted her full autonomy to establish and lead a brand new special investigations unit dedicated exclusively to cold cases and complex white-collar fraud investigations. This was more than just a promotion. It was a mandate, a platform that empowered her to pursue justice on a larger scale, ensuring that other silent victims, like those of Sterling Group, would find their voice and their day in court. This opportunity was a means for her to channel her profound personal drive for justice into a systemic change, indirectly healing her own past wounds by preventing such betrayals from happening again. Elena's actions had made her a hero, not just within the police force, but to the public. Letters of gratitude poured into the precinct, particularly from the victims of the Sterling Group fraud, families who had lost their retirement savings, individuals whose futures had been shattered, now sent heartfelt thanks, tears of vindication, and messages of hope. They saw in Elena not just a detective, but a champion, a beacon of truth in a world that often felt devoid of it. Weeks after the arrests, Elena found herself in a quiet, almost melancholic conversation with Marcus Thorne. They met in a secluded cafe, the clatter of cups and hushed chatter a gentle backdrop to their weighty dialogue. Marcus's face, though still handsome, was etched with the lines of profound grief and betrayal. His world had been irrevocably shattered, the woman he loved revealed as a co-conspirator in a monumental fraud. Yet, there was a newfound clarity in his eyes, a somber understanding. "Detective Reyes," Marcus began, his voice heavy with emotion, "I don't know how to thank you. You saved me from a lie, from a life built on deceit." He looked down at his coffee cup, then back at her, his gaze unwavering. "It hurts. More than I can say. But it's a pain I needed to feel. The truth, no matter how harsh, is better than a beautiful lie." Elena offered words of comfort, emphasizing that true healing could only begin with truth, no matter how harsh. She looked at him, seeing a man broken but beginning the long, arduous journey of rebuilding his life on an honest foundation. She reflected internally on how her own past, that vague, persistent dream of a grand house and a hushed argument, had fueled her relentless pursuit. The house in her dream, she realized, must have been an ancestral Moretti property, a place where the seeds of their corruption had been sown, the voices, perhaps of Julian and Isabella, or their parents, plotting. Sometimes, she mused, justice found its own unexpected and dramatic path, not confined to the sterile walls of courtrooms, but unfolding on the most public of stages, shattering illusions and revealing the darkest secrets. The conversation ended with a quiet understanding between them, both having been profoundly touched by the same painful truth, now slowly moving towards their separate, yet intertwined, paths of recovery and renewed purpose. 2 years later, the city, a ceaseless tapestry of human endeavor, continued its relentless expansion. But amidst the clamor of progress, there was a palpable shift, a quiet undercurrent of renewed trust in its institutions. Detective Lieutenant Elena Reyes, now a revered figure within the police force and beyond, thrived in her new role. The Special Investigations Unit she led, conceived in the crucible of the Moretti scandal, had become a formidable force for justice. It boasted a stellar reputation, successfully untangling several complex cold cases that had long baffled the department, bringing not just arrests, but a profound sense of closure and vindication to countless families who had lived with unanswered questions for decades. Her meticulous methods, combining forensic accounting with an almost intuitive understanding of human nature, and her unwavering commitment to the truth, had made her a legend within the force, whispered about in the academy halls and respected in the prosecutors' offices. Elena's personal life, though still marked by a quiet privacy, had acquired a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. The vague, persistent dream of the grand old house and the hushed arguments had finally faded, replaced not by emptiness, but by a quiet satisfaction. She no longer chased shadows of her past. Instead, she actively built a better, more just future, one where hidden truths were brought to light. She found a quiet joy in the impact she made, in the silent gratitude of those she helped. Her apartment, while still meticulously organized, now held subtle touches of personal comfort: a well-worn armchair, a small collection of books on ethics and philosophy, a single vibrant plant on her windowsill, reflecting a life slowly filling with meaning beyond the badge. Her commitment to justice extended far beyond her daily duties. Elena established and became the passionate champion of a groundbreaking new program within the police academy, aptly named the Integrity Initiative. This program, which she personally oversaw and often taught, focused heavily on ethics in law enforcement, advanced forensic accounting, and cutting-edge investigative techniques for complex white-collar fraud. It was designed to instill in young officers the paramount importance of unwavering dedication to truth and justice, even when facing internal or external pressures from powerful forces. She dedicated significant time to mentoring young women entering law enforcement, especially those who faced unique challenges or stereotypes. She shared her own experiences, her resilience, and her belief that true strength lay not just in physical prowess or intellect, but in unshakable integrity and profound compassion. Her goal was to empower them to become the next generation of unyielding truth seekers, carrying the torch she had lit. The story concluded on a crisp autumn afternoon, 2 years after Isabella's arrest, at a graduation ceremony for new police recruits. The academy grounds, usually bustling, were filled with a solemn yet hopeful air. Elena, impeccably dressed in her crisp, starched uniform, stood on the dais alongside Captain Davies, her face reflecting a quiet pride as she looked out at the sea of fresh, eager faces. She saw the future of the force, filled with young men and women ready to serve. Her gaze fell upon a particular young recruit, a woman with bright, determined eyes, who had been part of the first class of the Integrity Initiative, and whom Elena had personally mentored. The young woman looked up at Elena, her face alight with clear admiration and ambition, a silent promise of the path she intended to follow. As the ceremony drew to a close, the sun began its slow descent, casting long, golden shadows across the academy grounds. A single, brilliant ray of light pierced through the fading warmth, illuminating the new recruit's freshly pinned badge. It gleamed, a beacon of hope and a powerful symbol of the enduring pursuit of justice. The cycle of integrity, compassion, and courage, passed from one generation to the next, glowed brightly, a testament to Elena Reyes's enduring legacy. If this story stirred your heart, if it reminds you that courage can alter destinies and that light always finds a path even in the deepest darkness, please leave a comment. Share this story with those who need inspiration. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell to never miss our upcoming stories.